to you live from my bedroom. So this is going to be another story time video. This is going to be the story time about the time that I had a crush on a nun. And I think I got her sent away to another monastery, another nunnery. I don't know what it's called. Oh God, it's too fucking hot. Oh God. I was a home attendant for this wonderful woman named Mrs. Lee. I met her in the bingo hall that I used to work in. Remember I told you I used to work in the bingo hall in that last story time, the bingo brawl. So I met Mrs. Lee in the bingo hall, and then I had already stopped working in the bingo hall. I had gone to Puerto Rico to take care of my grandparents. And then when I came back to New York, word on the street was Mrs. Lee needed a home attendant, so I ended up going to work for her, and I was her home attendant. All right, fine. My boss, she was down with the nuns. You know what I'm saying? Like, she was down with Mother Teresa and all that. She met Mother Teresa twice. 2 different times. Mother Teresa touched her hand, all right? What is this? Is this a look? Mrs. Lee was down with the nuns, especially Mother Teresa, okay? Her and Mother Teresa were like this. Nah, they weren't like this. They just met twice, okay? So the first time they met, Mrs. Lee was sad. She had just lost her husband, and she had, like, mad kids, and she didn't know what she was going to do. Mother Teresa touched her hand and told her, you were going to do great things. And she sure did. She went on to do extraordinary things, okay? And then mad years passed. Mother Teresa came back to the hood, and Mrs. Lee saw her, but this time Mother Teresa was very old and sick and frail. And instead of Mother Teresa giving Mrs. Lee the kind words, Mrs. Lee gave Mother Teresa the kind words. Beautiful story, okay? So, a couple of blocks away from my boss's house, there was like this convent. Is that what you call the house where the nuns live? The convent? There was a church, and then there was a convent. And the nuns of Mother Teresa lived there. And they were cool with Mrs. Lee. So they would come to Mrs. Lee's house once a week. I'll never forget the first time the nuns came. I was like, what in the fuck is this? Because they are in full nun uniform, okay? Like, they have their nun gear on. And I just couldn't believe it because I had never seen nuns up close and personal like this, like dressed in the uniform. And I used to smoke weed back then. So I was always high, and then I had to open the door and there's nuns. You know, it was something else, okay? Okay, so really quick, one time I had dyed my hair. I had dyed my hair pink, blue, purple, and the nuns came and I opened the door. And one of the nuns was like, oh, you look like Parrot. That I look like a parrot. And I was like, oh, I didn't know how to take that because you're a fucking nun. What the hell are you doing judging me for my hair color? So I remember I told my little sister. And I was like, yo, you know this fucking nun told me that I look like a parrot? And my sister was like, you need to ask the Lord for forgiveness to forgive you for what you just said to my sister. That wasn't very holy. Which is true. You know, thou shalt not judge, okay? Is that not one of the things they teach you in the nunnery? I don't know, but what the fuck, nun, you know? You notice how I'm not calling her a bitch, right? Because she's down with the Lord Jesus Christ. I can't just be calling these people bitches. I looked really nice with my colorful hair. If I can find a picture of those times, I'll insert it right now. Look how nice. And you know what was funny? Because I felt like people weren't going to take me seriously with my colorful hair, so I put on these glasses. So I could look smarter, even though I don't need glasses. So I put on those glasses whenever I wanted to feel smart or whenever I wanted people to take me seriously. And so I was like, here I am walking with 78 different colors in my hair. Let me throw on some glasses. So, you know, whatever. What happens? One day, the nuns come to Mrs. Lee's house. And I open the door and I see like the head nun, because it was always the head nun, and then she would bring one of her nun friends with her, you know, whichever other nun, but it was one head nun. It was 3 nuns this time that came. It was 2 of the regular nuns that I had always seen, and it was 1 nun that I had never, ever seen before. The second I opened that door and I saw that 3rd nun, oh boy, I said, whoa. I said to myself, oh my God, this fucking woman is beautiful, right? So all I saw was her face. I didn't see any hair. I didn't see any of her body, but I know that she must have had a nice little body underneath those drapes, you know what I'm saying? The uniform, the robes. What is that? What do you call the habits? Is the habits a habit? What part of the nun's uniform is the habit? I don't know. Anyway, I looked at her and, you know, and then next thing you know, she just smiled at me. And when I tell you, my whole world lit up with that smile. She had these fucking huge dimples, this big bright smile, these beautiful crystal clear blue eyes, Oh my God, her skin was like porcelain. Her eyebrows were light. So I know that underneath that thing, if she had any hair left, because I think they cut your hair. I don't know if you're allowed to have your long hair under there. I think they cut it and then you got to cover your head. I don't know. I know it was blonde hair. So this is a blonde, blue-eyed, porcelain-skinned, beautiful, dimpled woman standing in front of me. I don't see the hair, mind you. And I'm just like, oh my God. Yo, she is gorgeous. So she comes into the house. I'm like, hey, hi, how are you? Come on in. So I let them in. I'm looking at Shorty as she walks by me. And I'm saying to myself, bitch, that is a nun. Okay, this is a woman of the Lord. Reel it in, okay? Because my hormones were doing things. Like, parts of my body were responding to this nun, okay? Ay, papá Dios. Perdóname. So what happens? They were all in the living room and I went into the dining room. So in Mrs. Lee's house, it was the living room and then it was the dining room, but there was no wall in between so we can just like all talk. You know what I'm saying? So I'm sitting here in the dining room table and they were all congregated here on the sofa, the rocking chair, and then there was like some other little chairs, right? Okay, fine. So we're all talking. Mrs. Lee introduces me to the new girl. They introduced the new girl, the nun, to us. And we're like, oh, hi. I can't remember her name. I can't remember her name, but we're going to call her pretty young thing, okay? I know she was younger than me. What was I? I was like in my early 30s. This girl, I know she was like probably in her mid to late 20s. I'm just there completely like, all I could do was sit there with a smile on my face and look at her. You know what I'm saying? Like, just like a fucking idiot. And I'm talking, I'm like, so how long have you been a nun?
Well, actually, I'm not a nun. I'm a nun in training. You know, I just got the calling.
Or whatever the fuck she said. Basically, she says to us that she had just been called by the Lord, okay? And so she was new to the nunnery. She was doing her work. You know what I'm saying? She wasn't technically a nun. She was like a recruit. You know what I'm saying? So I said to myself, oh my God, there is a chance here because she's not all in just yet. Like, she's technically not a nun, right? That was the end of that day. They ended up leaving. When they left, I go to Mrs. Lee and I'm like, oh my God, Mrs. Lee, she was beautiful. And Mrs. Lee is like,
She belongs to the Lord.
and I'm like, no, I know she's the Lord's now. You know what I'm saying? But, oh, I wish she could be mine. Because she is beautiful. Did you see her smile? And Mrs. Lee's laughing like, who do I have working for me? She used to always say that. Who do I have taking care of me? I was always myself around Mrs. Lee. Vulgar ass bitch who curses, smokes cigarettes, smokes weed. Like, I would walk into her house. I was high every day she knew I was. When her son would come home, I would hang out with him for like an hour after work, drinking beers, smoking weed. You know, may they both rest in peace because Mrs. Lee and her son Bobby, they're no longer with us. They're in a better place now. So now it's another day and the nuns are back. And they're back with this beautiful woman who I wanted to take out on a date. You know, the things that I used to think were terrible, I'm like, you know, I just want to lift up that nun garment and see what's going on under there, right? So what happens? She came, she was really happy when she saw me. Like, the same way that I was happy to see her, she was happy to see me. And I was just like, oh my God, does she like me? During this visit, it was the same three nuns. The two older nuns were talking with Mrs. Lee, and the one that I liked, the rookie nun, she sat at the dining room table with me. Let me tell you something. That's when I knew. That is when I knew there's something about me that's attracting this woman, and vice versa. So we're sitting together at the fucking dining room table, and her and I are talking about things. You know, she's asking me questions about my tattoos, and she's touching my arm. At that time, I didn't have all these my hands. I just had this fingerprint, my brother's fingerprint with his initials. That's the only tattoo that I had on my hands at the time. And I didn't have any of these. I just had this one. And this, I didn't have yet. I had like a snake and my face, and that was it. So she's asking me about these tattoos. I didn't have my throat or my ribs, none of that. So she's asking me questions about my tattoos. And I'm asking her questions about, you know, what made you want to become a nun? You know what I'm saying? And she's telling me the answers. And she's telling me how sometimes, you know, she misses certain things about life that she can't do anymore now that she's given herself to the Lord, right? And I'm just like, oh man, poor girl. And in my mind, I'm like, girl, I will give you all of the earthly pleasures that you want. You know what I'm saying? Just say the word and take that shit off your head. That was the last time that I saw her. I never saw her again. After they left that day, I never saw her again. So when the nuns came back, I noticed that they had come back a few times and she wasn't with them. So one time that they came, I asked for her. I said, you know, what's up with the beautiful nun? Why hasn't she come back? They said, oh, we had to send her away to another nunnery, convent, whatever you call it. There was some issues and she had to be sent somewhere else. There were some issues. When they left, I remember asking Mrs. Lee, was I the issue? She was like, I don't know, Nana, because they don't tell me, but I think they noticed that she was probably still, you know, of this earth. And they basically noticed that she took an interest in me and in things of the world. Like, because they weren't allowed to, like, read the newspaper, watch the news, read magazines, read books. If they were going to read a book, it could only be the Bible. They can't watch TV, watch movies. They can have regular conversations with people, but the conversations that her and I, she touched my arm. Okay, they probably saw that she was touching my arm and like my tattoos and shit. And they probably saw that. They saw that there was a chance if she stood here and kept coming to Mrs. Lee's house that I was going to turn her out, okay? Now, I would have felt bad because it's not my job to steal people from the Lord. But hello, if she wants to come freely and willingly, we have free will, okay? And if she wanted to come over to my way freely, who was I to stop her, you know? I would have asked her, listen, are you sure this is what you want? Who knows what would have happened? But the right thing happened. The right thing happened and she went on to another fucking convent to do what she needed to do for herself and for the Lord. And I'm glad that I didn't fucking taint her or ruin her life. All right, but that was it. That was the time I had a crush on a nun and I got her sent away because, oh my God, the force between her and it was great. I wanted to kiss her so bad. Like, I wanted to kiss her so bad. Oh, man. Anyway, the moral of the story is, if you see a nun and you think she's pretty, don't flirt. Because I flirted with my eyes. I didn't flirt with my mouth. I didn't say anything fresh. But I was giving her those eyes. You know those eyes? The look. The look that says, if you give me a chance, I will tear that ass up in the best possible way, okay? And I won't be a savage about mines in the beginning. But, you know, anyway, whatever. The point is, don't do it. Don't flirt with people of the Lord. Nuns, priests. Have I ever asked the Lord for forgiveness for lusting after one of his children? I don't know, but I should. All right, world, that's it. Don't go lusting after nuns. They have work to do on this earth, okay? If you like this video, you already know what to do. Like my shit. Subscribe to my channel. If you're a person of the Lord, don't give me a verbal lashing in the comments because I will either A, ignore you, B, I might curse you out, or C, just don't do it because people of the Lord shouldn't be, you know, leaving negative comments. I don't know. Anyway, listen, like, share, subscribe, ring the post notification bells. That's it. That's all I've got. Goodbye.